Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to retire early on SCHD dividends. And I'm going to cover a lot of information that other YouTube channels don't talk about. So whether you're a longtime investor in SCHD or you just don't understand why people invest in this ETF, stay until the end of this video and I'll try my best to share some insights. Now, in this video, I'll start by briefly talking about the dividend history and the upcoming dividend, and then I'll share some strategies for retiring on SCHD and achieving income escape philosophy. Now, if we start with the dividend history, looking at March of 2024, my first dividend received was about $68. And if we fast forward to July of 2025, that dividend was about $859, which is about a 10x from the first dividend. Now, if we look at the upcoming dividend for September 29th, for 7,000 shares at 26 cents per share, the expected payout is about $1,800, which is an all time high for this portfolio. And if you live in Asia, that's 2 to 3 months worth of rent. But I know some of you might be thinking, you invested that much and you only made about $1,800? Aren't there other ETFs that just pay a lot more? And you'd be right. Once upon a time, SCHD was one of the best ETFs for creating and accumulating wealth. And one reason, or many reasons why, 3.5 to 4% was considered a high yield 5 to 10 years ago. And if you look at the last decade, SCHD has experienced a lot of share price appreciation. But in today's financial landscape, it's not the leader in these areas anymore. And honestly, there are just other ETFs that do a better job. But I think SCHD is still strong in many areas. For example, low tech exposure, dividend growth, and tax benefits. I think SCHD is transitioning from a wealth accumulation ETF to a wealth preservation ETF. And so if we look at the dividend history, you can see that in 2018, it paid about 47 cents per share, which is, not the highest amount from an ETF. But if you look at 2024, you can see that the annual dividend doubled, right? And SCHD has had a pretty consistent history of growing its dividends. And so if we zoom in, to a little bit more recent times, you can see that in 2024, 2025, it's about $1, but in 2030 to 2031, it's expected to double again. And I think this is a really powerful feature of SCHD, especially for wealth preservation. But I know some of you might be thinking, but it's only 3.5% yield. Why would I want that? There are plenty of other funds that have a higher yield. And I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings for SCHD at first glance. Now, when you're looking on paper or online, you'll see that the current market yield for SCHD is like 3.5%, maybe sometimes closer to 4. But that's just a measure of the potential future return. It's not the actual yield on cost, which is a measure of the actual dividend return. And I know some of you might be thinking, what do you mean? What's the difference between the current market yield and the yield on cost? Well, if I give an example here, you can see that in 2028, the projected or estimated dividend is about $1.62, which is about 5.93% yield on cost. And now you might be thinking, well, what do you mean? I thought it was 3.5%. And yes, if you buy it in 2028, it's still going to be 3.5 to 4%. But if you hold the shares, if you buy it now and you hold the shares until 2028, your yield on cost is estimated to be about 5.93%. And so I think for SCHD holders, that's where it shines. The longer you hold this stock, the more powerful, the more it works for you. And if you look at 2030, the estimated dividend is about $2.06, or an estimated yield on cost of 7.57%. Now, some of you might still be thinking, I still don't get it. Well, if I give you another example, and I use my actual 7,000 shares as an example, if you look at the year 2028, you can see that the estimated dividend is about $1.40 to $1.62. And I created this range based off of the last 3 year and 5 year CAGR because I thought it was kind of hard to calculate what the dividend would be in 2028. So instead, I just gave a range. And if you have 7,000 shares today, in 2028, it's going to pay somewhere between $9,800 and $11,300. Now, those same shares, if you hold them in 2029, the dividend is going to grow to somewhere between $1.53 to $1.83. And then 7,000 shares will pay you roughly about $10,700 to $12,900. And in 2030, helped me actually achieve something called income escape velocity. And for those of you who are not quite familiar with escape velocity, it's actually when a portfolio's income is able to cover your annual expenses and help fight inflation and even reach new all time highs. So, if we look at a snapshot of what my 2030 portfolio could look like, you can see that the dividend income, the annual dividend income, is about $53,000. And that's based off of four funds: SCHD, CGDG, HOW, and DGRO. Now, by 2030, these are the amount of shares that I'm going to hold. I'm not going to reinvest. I'm not going to buy more shares. That's all the shares that I want for this portfolio. And the great thing about this fund is because of its dividend growth, it's going to keep growing without any intervention from me. So if we look at 2035, you can see that my dividend income actually jumps up to $74,500. But as you see, I still have the same shares. It's just the dividend growth has happened, and now those shares are paying me more money. Now, if we look at 2040, you can see that there are some changes. I no longer have HOW, which is a leverage ETF. And if you've been watching my channel for a little while, you know that I don't really think dividend snowball strategy is an optimal strategy for today's financial landscape. I don't believe in drip, and I don't think DCA is effective. But I use these high yield ETFs to generate income to help me buy more dividend growth funds. But at some point, I'm not going to need them because my dividend growth funds generate enough money. So at that time, at least for me in 2040, I'm going to convert that money or reallocate it to a high yield savings account. And looking at these funds, you can also see that there's an addition. Now I should have access to my Roth IRA account, which is going to pay me about $20,000 in tax free money. Now in 2045, you can see that I've reached $142,000. And these are conservative estimates. It could actually be a lot higher. But you can see that I've actually taken out CGDG. I've reallocated that money to my high yield savings account. And now I have access to Social Security. But the big question is, well, is $142,000 enough in 2045? And the answer is probably. And if we consider geographical arbitrage, which is what I'm doing right now, um, there are many cities, many countries around the world that are a lot more affordable to pay rent, to buy food, and to travel, such as Bangkok in Thailand or Taipei in Taiwan. So if I'm able to do geographical arbitrage and these cities are still, much more affordable than the US in 20 years, I think my $142,000 is going to go pretty far. Now, the other thing that really makes SCHD and other dividend growth funds shine is the qualified dividends part. And I talked about this in another video. But if we look at the qualified dividend income chart, you can see that SCHH only qualifies for about 1.68%. And that's because REITs are generally not classified as qualified dividends. Now, if we look at SCHF, you can see that it's about 85% qualified dividend. And that's because international funds are generally not qualified dividends. But if you look at SCHD, you can see that it's 100% qualified. And I think this is a very underrated part of SCHD, but probably the most powerful in the long term. Now, one reason why is if you look at the tax chart for qualified dividends in 2025, you can see that if you're a single filer and your qualified dividends is less than $48,350, your tax rate is 0%. And if you're married and filing jointly, it's about double that at $96,700. So 142,000 for this portfolio. One thing that I think is really powerful is all of the tax benefits or tax advantages. Now, this is not tax advice and I'm not a tax professional, but I've made some assumptions on how this portfolio is going to perform in light of all of these tax advantages. So, if we look at the qualified dividends part, remember SCHD and actually DGRO are 100% qualified dividends. And right now, the limit is $48,350 for 2025. But in 2045, the estimation is about $79,200. And I use just a simple Kager formula, thinking about 2.5% inflation rate. That's how I came out to that number. It's not the most accurate because I don't know what the inflation rate or how they're going to change this in the next 20 years. So this is a big assumption. Now, if we look at the Roth IRA, we know that right now it's tax free income. So that $15,000, I don't have to pay income on it. And for Social Security, I feel like they are changing the rules with how it's being taxed, and it's probably going to be changed again in the next decade. But right now, you can be taxed up to 85% of your Social Security benefits. But there are a lot of factors in how they calculate that. Now, if we look at the standard deduction for a single filer in 2025, it's about $15,000. And using a similar Kager formula, I estimate that in 2045, it'll be about $24,570. Again, a pretty big assumption. Now, if we put all this together, looking at my 142,000 portfolio income, and we minus the Roth IRA, the single filer deduction, and I'm only taxed on part of the Social Security, that means my taxable income comes out to about $81,930. Now, you remember the qualified dividend limit. Right now, it's about 79. Well, in 2045, it'll be about $79,200. So if we do some simple math, that means from a $142,000 portfolio, only 2,730 of that is considered taxable income. And so what I'm paying in taxes comes out to about $409.50 off of $142,000. To me, that's incredible. Now, again, I'm making a lot of assumptions here. I could be quite wrong in some areas, but just thinking ahead, this is something to figure out in the next 5 or 10 years. Now, one reason why I think this is powerful because if you're doing geographical arbitrage, some places don't have a double tax agreement. So that means you might be paying taxes in the US and you might be paying taxes in that country. So I know a lot of people, they say, oh, the more money you make, don't be afraid to pay taxes. But if I had to pay taxes twice, I think that'd be unfortunate. So when I look at my SCHD portfolio and I look at $142,000, it's not going to beat in total return, but I think it's still going to help me achieve income escape velocity. And it's going to be a self sustaining portfolio, meaning I don't have to reinvest any of the money or dividends back into it in order to get more dividends or to control NAV decay. And it's really passive. So it's something that I can actually set and forget and sleep better at night. And at some point, for high yield income investors, you really have to consider how much is your sleep worth? And as I said, although SCHC portfolio 142,000 may not achieve total return, I think it's actually going to achieve life return. Well, that's all for today's video. I hope you got a lot of value out of the video. Please like this video and subscribe to watch more free content on achieving financial freedom and living in Asia. Thanks again and see you in the next video. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as financial advice. Consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions.